The DubWhycast is made possible by people going on the ExP homepage, www.exp.uk, and buying my albums on vinyl and CD and getting merch as well. So big thanks to everyone who has. And if you enjoy these podcasts, please consider helping out by going and buying some. Hello, and welcome to the second series of the DubWhycast. I'm ExP, a hip-hop musician based in West Yorkshire, DubWhy. I made a decision in the last year or so that I should invest time in helping promote and support the West Yorkshire hip-hop scene that I know and love so well. A scene which has supported my involvement in music for over 2 decades. Yes, I am that fucking old. Last season I spoke about my wish to talk to those involved in hip-hop in West Yorkshire, and I said I'd expand my search out to soul and jazz as well, but a spreadsheet I've inevitably put together puts the number of active MCs and producers in West Yorkshire at approximately 200, and I'm finding out about new people every week. Therefore, at this rate, this will probably be a West Yorkshire hip-hop specific podcast for at least the next 7 years? If you're an active and involved West Yorkshire hip-hop artist, I will want to speak to you at some point and find out what it's all about for you. There's not much method to who I choose to get on, but I insist on doing these outside so there's West Yorkshire scenery in the background where possible. And the weather has absolutely trolled me in a lot of cases. I'm meeting people I have a lot of history with and people I barely know, all with the intention of connecting DubWhy hip-hop artists and giving you, the listener, a chance to know the people behind the great music they make. And on this episode, it's Simon Mawson, aka Guv, aka the Guvnor, aka the Scarlet Pimpernel. Me and Guv go back in the day, to the point where the first thing I ever recorded when I was 16, when I was called Voodoo X, as anyone who's listened to my Ramesh Ranganathan interview has found out, and my album Unparalleled Dimension, we recorded that together as a present for my GCSEs. My parents bought it because he lived down the road and my parents knew his dad. And that began our relationship in hip-hop from then on. And the guy is just an absolute hero of mine. Kind of modelled myself on him in the fact that he had a studio in Bradford where everyone recorded their stuff, including me. And then when he left town, I kind of ended up soaking up a lot of that work. And DubWhy Studios, where I am and where we filmed this outside, is kind of following in his footsteps of all that hard work and amazing stuff that he did, he produced and engineered. So it gives me great pleasure to present Guv! Guvnor!
All right.
How are you doing, bro?
Yeah, I'm good,
Can I
thanks.
refer to you, you're no longer the Guvnor these days.
I'm happy to be referred to as Guv, yeah.
Well, that's it.
Yeah,
there's a few people who'll be watching this, I bet, who are like, oh shit, Guv! And like, know you through and through, man.
Yeah.
Bro, like, thanks very much for coming through and joining me. You don't live in Yorkshire these days, but it's a big deal for me that we could do this in front of my studio. Because as I sort of said to you before, like I do feel like I model myself off what you.
I seen the Mr. Ed episode. Yeah, it was quite a compliment.
Oh man, honestly, bro. Well, the thing is, like, usually I get people to do their origin stories on this in the beginning, but actually, like, you play such an important part in my origin story because we grew up on the same street.
That's right. Yeah. Next door but one.
Next door but one. Yeah. On Fairfax Road in Bingley, not near the Five Rise Locks. And when I was young, well, how old are you? What's your birth year?
78.
78, right. So you were like 7 years ahead of me, and you were like learning to play drums. I remember there was drums coming from down there and that.
Yeah.
Where did music come in down there? Because my dad knew your dad as well, which was sick. But
I mean, okay, so we always grew up in a musical household, similar to yourself. I mean, I remember your sister always playing saxophone and what have you. And so my dad played the bass in a church band.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Was he decent?
They're all right. They played festivals and what have you, Christian festivals.
Nice.
So they put out a record on a Christian record label. Was in the church house band.
I never knew that.
Yeah, grew up in a very musical household.
Nice.
Yeah. Uncle was a piano player.
Ah, okay. Yeah. So
so I played piano to start off with, and I wasn't really interested in that.
Yeah.
At the time, I wanted to play drums. So
it was very daring of them, because most parents are like, you want to play drums, that's great, but you can't play drums because you'll piss everyone off. So was it just your dad being safe as fuck that went like, go on, we'll get you a full drum
Well,
kit?
they wanted me to play an instrument, so it was like, well, drums was what I was into at the time. So
Mad.
yeah, and you heard it all down the street, right?
Did you piss anyone off back in the day?
No, on that street it was all good. There was never really any complaints that I remember.
No, how old were you when you were playing drums then? What was it like?
Probably about 10, 11 when I started.
And what were you playing? Like, what were you playing along to? What was your...
Back then, Rage Against the Machine, Nirvana, Metallica, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when was that? Because you've always been. You've always had a really eclectic interest in music and stuff.
Fully. Yeah.
But obviously, where you ended up was doing a lot of hip hop production and stuff. Were you playing along to hip hop as well, or were you into hip hop and stuff? Like
I was. It was always like, the. I was thinking about this actually on the way over, and I seem to remember the first rap single I ever bought was from the church. So we went to a church in Idle.
Yeah.
And it was about 84, and I remember buying a rap single from the church.
Damn, which one?
I can't remember the name of it. I can remember the outro of the track where it was like massively reverberant and people said, "Oh, you've locked me in the studio," and blah, blah, blah.
Right. Oh, so it wasn't a specifically Christian hip-hop song?
It was two guys that were in the church and recorded this hip-hop single, right?
Man.
Yeah, and there was a record shop within the church that sold specifically Christian music.
That's too cool.
And I bought this like rap single from the church. And it was sort of, going forward, it was always, in Bradford, you had the shops that sold like the subculture music, but there was always like the guitar-based stuff, there was always Public Enemy stuff there and what have you.
Yeah.
And on Fairfax Road, I used to record a videotape, a show called Raw Power, which was all the like alternative guitar stuff, a lot of metal and what have you.
Yeah.
And my friend on the end of the street used to record MTV raps, and we'd make tapes from the videos and swap them. So
sick.
that rap stuff, it was like Common Sense before it was common.
Yeah. Can I borrow $1 era?
Yeah, Lords of the Underground, Souls of Mischief, 92. But then we also were getting a lot of, through skateboarding, exposed to a lot of American underground music.
Yeah.
20-shot sequence. I seem to remember, I might have got this wrong, but there was a lot of 36 chambers on that before it even came out in this country, about 6 months.
No way.
So we were hearing all that before.
Oh,
so
original.
all that, yeah.
Bingley had the good stuff, man.
So again, I've looked for this on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Can't find it anywhere, but there was a British episode of Yo MTV Raps.
Right.
With Fab Five Freddy and Brixton.
Oh,
And I'm
man.
pretty sure it had London Posse and Hijack on it, so that was like the
Hijack
first
for that.
exposure to
To
UK.
British hip-hop and
Yeah,
stuff.
to UK rap.
Mad, man. That is mental.
Yeah.
Why is it always Hijack that come up with the old school British? That they seem to like be one of the first that anyone had heard of, man.
Yeah.
So many people are referenced back to them. Crazy shit, man.
And Gunshot as well. Yeah.
Do you know what? I had a memory of my sister bringing a tape through, and it had the it was one of the first showings of I want to say Thriller, the Michael Jackson, the zombie video, but the elongated version.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel that was on like some tape to tape. And I bet that came through one of you guys.
Yeah, yeah.
She used to hang around down the street with a lot of them. Was it the Spillers who used to do the cars up? Was that the guy who did the MTV raps, or was that another guy?
It was my mate D, who's now passed away.
Oh,
but, yeah,
shit, man.
rest in peace. But yeah, he used to have Sky TV. He was one of the only people that I knew at the time who had Sky TV. MTV raps. Yeah, and we'd make tapes and swap them. So.
Nice. So you were skating as well at the time? What sort of time you started skating? About like 12, 13?
Yeah, about 13, 14.
Nice. Was there spots to do it in Bingley, or did you have to go
There
out
was.
further
We had
afield?
the undercover shopping centre.
Oh,
So
sick.
come the
Precinct.
winter, come the winter, we always had somewhere dry to go skating.
Nice. And what you could, how did that work? There were no shops open and stuff like that? Or was
On
it?
a night time, there wasn't. No.
Of course.
And over time, we wrecked all the benches and.
Did you ever go on the top? Did you ever do much skating on the top of that?
Yeah, a little
It's
bit on the top.
graffiti up there as well.
Yeah, a little bit on the top. But it was mainly, travelling around, coming into Leeds, going to Bradford, Shipley, Saltaire.
Yeah.
Running around all over, and then, through that, we'd meet like older people who into DJing and what have you, and just a full eclectic taste of music, and it's that thing of not being defined by genre, if you like, and actually being open to other people's taste in music.
Yeah,
definitely.
fully. Well, so. Yeah, playing drums, skating. At what point do you get the bug? Because like when I met you, so I'll do my origin story with you now. When I was 15, 16, my parents realised that I'd been writing rap, and because I kept it quite quiet from them, like doing it in the back of revision guides and stuff like that. But like was doing little bits and pieces, and the internet was really useful for that because there were like rap forums and stuff like that. And at 16, I passed my GCSEs, and by which time they knew that I'd done some bits. And as a present for passing my GCSEs, they booked me 2 days of recording.
Was it? Yeah, I remember this.
With
right.
you.
Yeah.
And I was still American accent, still wet behind the ears. And a friend of mine from school rolled a joint for me that I could smoke in the studio because that would be really cool. But yeah, you were the guy, and it was just 2 days of like mind blowing like experience with someone who knew what the fuck they were doing while you bless you, had to record my disgusting American raps over my disgusting hip hop EJ production. But you were very tolerant and very cool about it. So you were already there at 16, so that makes you in that studio at 23.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
So when did you start with like producing? Because obviously your stuff, we were doing reel-to-reel recording.
That's right.
Onto DAT tape in the end.
Yeah,
I've still got that DAT tape somewhere.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I did the old. I think you told me to post it to myself for copyright reasons. I think you might have taught me that trick. Like anyone would have possibly
Don't
ripped
open
me
the
off.
envelope. Right. Yeah. It's the cheapest way to copyright.
That you told me that. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So how did you move from this drummer who was skating to like the fucking engineer?
So left school, and it was like, okay, what do I do?
16, sorry.
16.
Yeah.
I think I went and did a music GCSE.
Sick.
I went to do a music course in Wakefield that was predominantly performance, playing drums.
Nice.
And I was kind of into it, but not overly into it. And then from there, I went to do a BTEC in music technology in Bradford.
Dope.
And I just got really into the studio side of things.
Nice.
It was one of them where, 30 people wanted to get in the studio, and we had an allocated like 2 hours a month or something. But I quickly worked out, come 5:30, everyone had gone home. The building was open and the studio was empty. So
you could get in after hours?
Yep. And I just got really into knowing how all the equipment worked, figuring out how to sync up the tape machine to the computer that was just MIDI back then. There was no audio, right?
The knowledge you needed for recording back then was crazy.
Yeah, and sometimes it'd work and sometimes it wouldn't. And it's just like, and just making, knowing all the equipment inside out. And just learning about everything. And then from there, I went to Sheffield to a place called Red Tape, which was set up like a music industry school. And it was... it was good. I had free access to a lot of different studios, got to learn like Pro Tools, some more high-end studios compared to what they had at Bradford College. Yeah. And there I met Doyen D. Yeah,
amazing.
Cocka. And I ended up, because I had free run of the studios, I ended up doing Mobile Library. And that, it was a good project to work on. It was the first full album I got an engineer credit for.
So that Mobile Library was the Doyen D album,
It was a Doyen D and Cocka album, yeah.
Doyen D and Cocka album, right.
Yeah.
So and he was already there, Doyen D. He was at the same place as you were in Sheffield?
No,
like,
so he was...
studio.
I knew him from going out. He was around the scene a bit. And there was like a real crossover between the hip-hop scene in Sheffield and skateboarding at the time. And it was a night called NY Sushi. And he was always at that night. And, you know, some friends like Rick's, Danielson there with the, like, and D-Rock there with the resident DJs there. They lived in a house. D-Rock lived in a house with some skateboard friends. So it was quite a close circle. And Doyen had just had a 7-inch put out.
Yes. Doyen D was the rapper, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And Cocka was the producer of that. I remember.
And, you know, knew him on the surface, and I knew that he was working on an album, and he'd been going to Brixton to record this album. I said, look, I've got the studio, I've got free run of it. Let's do it in Sheffield. And he was like, yep, cool, let's do it.
Nice.
And over a few months, we did the Mobile Library EP. And with that one, I remember... So it was about a year before that, I think Jest had just put out his first release, and the Y&R stuff was coming around.
Oh, okay.
And that was making it like, okay, this is like feasible to do independent releases, we can do stuff like this. And then that year later, doing the Mobile Library, with Tommy Evans was there, Usman was there.
Yeah.
It was like, right, hang on a minute, I'm a young kid learning how to engineer and record, and then...
You're in there with like UK hip-hop.
Yeah, you know, the people who are... up there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And Mobile Library, did it come out on record?
It did come out on record. Yeah, I think it was an independent release.
Can you still get hold of copies of that? I wonder.
I don't know.
Have you still got your copy?
I have still got a copy of
with
it.
With your first ever production credit.
Yep, first ever.
When was the last time you listened to that?
God, must be over 10 years ago.
Oh, okay. What's your? Because over 10 years ago, were you like, oh yeah, that wasn't bad? Or were you like, oh fucking hell, if I recorded that now, I'd have done X, Y, and Z? Or were you pretty happy with the way it went? It's pretty raw, that shit.
It is, but there was a lot of technical issues with that, right? So we recorded it on AirDATs.
Yeah.
And with the level of edits that wanted to be done in terms of like dropping beats and editing samples afterwards, we transferred it into Pro Tools. Getting technical now, but there was a lot of digital errors in the transfer from AirDAT into Pro Tools. So it came out sounding quite thin, and it's like, oh shit. But then afterwards, straight afterwards, we did. I mean, I'm still proud of it and still proud that we worked on that. And I got to sort of explore a lot of vocal production techniques, like say for the ad-libs, rather than being close up to the mic, like being this distance, because that's where it sits naturally in the mix.
I see, yeah.
Works on some songs, but not on others.
Yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah.
And then from there, we did a 12-inch called The Sickness. Straight afterwards, it was like, right, I've got 3 weeks left of these studios before I leave Sheffield.
Yeah.
And we did a 3-track 12 called The Sickness that never came out.
Right.
But that sounded, I was really proud of how that came out. Yeah, because with all the mistakes we learned from doing the mobile lab, it's like, right, I'm going to get it right this time. And
yeah.
we treated the room a bit before we started the mixing to get the room sounding right. And I think them 3 tracks came out on an LP of Doyen's like quite a few years later.
That makes
I can't
sense.
remember which one it was.
I think one of the first things, I think you played me a couple of tracks in the studio when I first came in when I was 16. And Doyen D was quite hardcore with the stuff he was talking about. And I remember the first line, Satan has cancer. I feel like he like, Satan has cancer, or something like that. And that being like the first line.
That sounds about right.
I can't remember that Sickness album.
Right. Possibly. And then I'm trying to remember what happened between sort of Sheffield and you coming to do your first recording at 16. And I seem to remember I went to London for a little bit.
Wow. Doing some trying to do engineering stuff.
I think I went to university there.
Nice. I think I went to uni. Might have done.
Yeah, sort of. I remember like not being able to. I struggled with like the posh Southerners, and left and came back to Bradford.
Yeah.
And I seem to remember coming back to Bradford, got in touch with Doyen and said, look, I've got not run of a studio, but I've got access to a studio.
Yeah, let me just stop you there then.
Right.
How did you get to Mutiny? Because that was the studio. That down Thornton Road was like,
So
how did you get access to that?
all the time I was living in Sheffield, some friends from Bradford College who I did the music tech with, they were a bit older than myself. They were setting up a studio. It was like a practice room that turned into a live room, treated it a little bit, built a control room and got some quite basic equipment in there.
Yeah.
And we used to just go around there, jam a bit, record it, edit it a bit, put some samples on, just quite experimental music with the equipment that was there. And when I came, things weren't working out in London. And a friend at the time said, look, we've got this studio, you know what you're doing, just come and go as you please. If any money comes through the door, just put some in the kitty. And it's like, all right,
hell yeah.
So
if anyone comes through the door, put some money in, otherwise chill, yeah?
Yeah.
That's gorgeous.
It was, and it was a real godsend at the time. It was like, I was a bit stuck, things weren't working out in London. It's like, well, I've got this back in Bradford, so why not come back to Bradford, right?
Yeah.
So that seemed like the right thing to do at the time. And but then, spoke to Doyen, and he said, right, I've got a single I want to do.
Yeah.
It's going to come out on SFDB. We'll come over and do it. And I think we did the single, it was Cock Diesel. Single within, I think we did it one weekend, and then they came back about a month later, I think the cuts were changed, and there was a couple of bits of vocal change.
Yeah.
Then we mixed it again in one day.
Yeah.
And that was that done.
Man, in an era where the recording process was a lot trickier. You couldn't just drop someone in for a splice as such, like on that.
I mean, you could drop people in for edits. You know, on the tape machine, you had to know how to use the tape machine to cue it up on the seconds and how to hold the buttons. But it was more. I mean, that was quite straightforward doing the edits like that with a tape machine. But it was the sort of how provincial the outboard was compared to doing it all in the box, where you can have a compressor on every channel.
Yeah, of course.
And back then it was like looking at, okay, we've got an MPC. By that point, Cocka had 8 outputs on his MPC, which really helped.
Nice.
And so we had it all separated out on a 16-track Tascam tape machine. But it was thinking, okay, so we don't have, how are we going to use the tape machine? So it was like driving like the kicks and snares into the saturation of the tape machine.
Yeah.
And we had one stereo compressor. I think it was across. We might have used it on vocals on some, and then put it across the stereo mix on another track.
Yeah.
I can't properly remember, but one compressor, one reverb unit, 16-track tape machine, and a desk.
Nice.
And in comparison to nowadays.
Yeah.
And I do listen back to that one actually, and I think part of the characteristic of that sound is sort of the space within it, from not being able to over compress everything.
Yeah.
That's kind of, to me now, what stands out about that record is the space, and it's not overly compressed. It's not overly
These
processed.
days, everyone's just ramming stuff to fuck, aren't they? But like you only had some
pushing everything into the limiters and everything.
But it gave it a certain sound and a feel in it, and the restriction that you had was. I mean, that's pure hip hop in its purest, isn't it? It's like we've got this, and it has to work.
Yeah,
so.
working with the equipment we've got.
Yeah.
And I think with that record in particular, one of the prouder things, it was a couple of years later, I can't remember what magazine it was, and a friend that knew I'd worked on the record was like, have you seen this? And they opened up the centrefold of a magazine, and it had 50 records of 25 years of hip hop on this collage, and that was one of the records that was on there.
Wow.
And I was like,
huge.
Yeah, that was a real, the fact that someone who put that collage together had held it in that high regards.
Mate,
was like,
that's got to feel good, man.
Yeah.
It's a funny, because like part of what I do now is like the engineering stuff, and it's not nearly as technical as what you're doing. Like sitting in a different room to the other guy, but I'm recording it on Cubase. All the compressors are there. It's a much more simple thing compared to like the amount of graft that you had to do in order to make it sound nice in those days. But like there's such a satisfaction to like something coming out or it being rated that you do feel like a really important part of it.
Course,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful thing. There's nothing I like more than having my name on a record that I've recorded or like recorded at WYcast Studios. It's on a vinyl. You're like, come on now.
Yeah.
It's so life affirming. Even though I didn't write it, I was sat there. I got paid the majority of the time.
But you've been there as part of the process of that creating that record.
So meaningful, man. Like,
yeah.
It's such a sick feeling, definitely.
Totally.
One that I didn't get for like years after. Well, so what happened to Doyen D and Cocka? Because I remember they were still knocking around when I was like 20. Certainly Cocka was. I nearly rapped on in fact, did I rap on I think I did bring a beat of his through and recorded it with you. Because you were you were the guy I recorded with. So I'd have some stuff written and I'd come through. So every time after 16, up until maybe you left DubWhy, I was coming through with bits and pieces. What happened to Doyen D and Cocka? Do you still know him? Like,
I was in touch with them for quite a lot of years after that, actually, and I think I'm fairly sure they carried on working together. I think they did a lot of stuff in Sheffield. There's another album came out. I think it was Street Legal. Was the album that came out after that.
Nice.
I can't properly remember. And then I think they went their separate ways, and Doyen did. I think it was Furnace Hill Click. I think that was the last album he did.
Yeah.
And then Cocka moved to Leeds.
No way.
So Cocka was living in Leeds, and he lived in Shipley.
He briefly lived in the same flat as me. Like I think Nabil sort of side rented.
Yeah, that's right.
I out to him.
Yeah, and
didn't work great.
I mean, he was always, I remember he was always doing production, but was always quite critical of rappers, and never found a rapper that he wanted to work with. I can't remember where in the timeline this is. It was around the time we recorded your first album, and Cocka had produced an album for Usman,
right?
And he got me in to do the engineering. We went to this house in London, and I can remember being in this. The house was being renovated at the time, and we were in a bedroom, and there was a little makeshift vocal booth. Again, quite minimal equipment, an 8-track hard disk recorder synced up to the MPC. Small mixing desk, a mono compressor this time, not a stereo compressor, one effects unit, and we did an Usman solo album.
Yeah.
And Usman was doing a crew at the time called Kings of the OR.
Okay.
And both projects were half produced by Cocka, and the other half were produced by, I think it was Evil Ed.
Oh right, wow.
And we did, 1 week we did 2 albums.
Amazing.
Whether either of them ever came out.
I'm going to say, Usman just seemed to disappear off the...
He
was like really prevalent in UK hip-hop and then sort of seemed to just drop off a cliff.
He was on, I think some of the last stuff that I heard he did was on some of the, was it Falling Down? The Jest album?
That makes sense. That's kind of where I knew him from before, because I didn't know what was going on at the time, and then he was on that, definitely. Yeah. Was Under the Weather him? Them two?
I'm not sure.
Or was that a Saviour? That might have been Saviour, actually. Yeah. But he was definitely on. I can't remember which song he was on with Jess, but that's what I knew him from. But then seemed to disappear. Same with Tommy Evans, actually. Like, huge career, and then he did that Ophelia and stuff, like one of the biggest songs in UK hip hop. Yeah. And then disappeared. But I know he went to Islam and did some things, kind of dropped the rapping. But he's actually come back. Don't know whether you've seen. He's come back out the other side now.
I heard on one of your podcasts.
He's doing stuff with Agent M, and he's doing stuff around Leeds and all the rest of it. Like, so I hope one day we can get a chat with him. Like, because it'd be really cool to. Obviously got got a crazy story with UK hip hop and stuff. So you're doing stuff for Doyen D and back and forth and all the rest of it, but like what I really knew about you was like working with every fucker. For a period of time, your Mutiny was just a constant like rotating door of loads of people.
Just going back a minute, I'm thinking about I remember a track called Chobos. Was that on your first album or was that on your second one?
So it depends what you're counting as the first album. The first EP, which was Voodoo X's Unparalleled Dimension. So Voodoo X Unparalleled Dimension. Let's just get that out of the way. Right. That was when I was 16. And that wasn't the Chobos one. Right. The Chobos was, Bred in Bradford, which was technically my first album, but even now I'm like, Remarkable is my first album from 2017. But yeah, that 2006 album was effectively my first solo one. And yeah, we did Chobos, Internet Girls, other bits and pieces on there. But like, there was a couple with Nabil, a couple with J and D came through and recorded a couple then, yeah. So that was that era, man. Yeah. Actually, I'm just going to go off on a side. I remember recording, we were recording J&D over a couple of verses for that, and I had to stand in the same live room as him because he'd seen a ghost.
That's right, yeah, he was well nervous, flipping out.
And you didn't, because he was like, I've definitely seen something moving corner, and there was no other fucker there, and I'm sure you went, oh yeah, there's a ghost in here. And from then on, you were like, right, well, I'm not going anywhere. Had you seen a ghost in there before? Or is that just some bullshit you told to wind him up? Do you think was Mutiny haunted? Is my question.
Mutiny was a bit haunted.
Was it? Yeah. What had you seen some bullshit go on?
Particularly in the corridors, like yeah. Whether you believe in ghosts or not,
it's always interesting.
Late night, early hours of the morning. Yeah, I thought I saw a ghost once or twice in that building. Yeah.
There you go. So that is basically what you said to Luke, I think, and he was like, "Well, yeah, you're gonna have to stand in there while I record."
It was like some people naturally sense a presence of these ghosts, right? True. Or they say they do. And I think he was sensing some presence and he was feeling a bit nervous. And I was like, oh, yeah, I think I've seen ghosts in this building. That made him even more. And maybe I shouldn't have said that at the time.
No, it was funny. Memories from 06, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, So you were recording with loads of other guys. How did you get... Who were the first people coming through out of that lot then, and how did you get to know them? Because of course you were working with No Pretense and Bane. You did some bits of Spider Lee, and so how did you? Because it was pre-internet. So how were you putting your name about, or were people just recommending you?
So I remember, you came through as you said when you were 16.
Yeah, that was because my dad knew you.
Yeah, I can't remember. There was bits like people were coming through. There's people I didn't know coming through. That prevalent on like the West Yorkshire scene as like the No Pretense, New Jerusalem, Chief Wigs. Yeah. And it was around MySpace time actually.
Oh, okay.
And people started connecting a lot more when MySpace was about.
Yeah.
And the very first time I had WY saw the logo, I think it was through Livewire, was mailing people quite a lot. Do you remember Livewire?
Mate. Bane, he's literally got a podcast we're putting out next week, and he talks about Livewire working alongside Dr. Crow, and sort of trying to bring people to the scene in. So yeah. But drum and bass guy mainly, wasn't he?
No, it was hip hop.
Was he hip hop Livewire?
Part of that Don't Talk Strangers crew.
Oh, okay.
So he was messaging quite a lot of people on MySpace saying, we should link up, blah blah. We need to make it more of a, know what's going on, like Dewsbury, Batley, and Wakefield, and. So there was a bit of that conversation going on, and around the same time, Fresh Milk had started. You remember Fresh Milk?
Yeah, I do. Where's that? Right. Was that at the mill?
No, that was at the Love Apple.
Love Apple, right.
So Fresh Milk was, I think it was a concept of a jam that used to happen in one of the pubs in Bradford with a lot of like the older blues players and what have you.
Yeah.
And it was the drummer Rob Heaton, again, rest in peace Rob, it's from New Model Army. He had this idea of like, well, we're accomplished musicians. There's a lot of like younger generation who are really into freestyle, open mic, improvised performance. I feel like I definitely
went down and dropped some bars of Fresh Milk.
I remember. And so he I was meeting him around this time where he's like, I'm bringing this to Love Apple, blah blah. We're going to do it more sort of less blues, but more sort of hip hop orientated. We're going to have it open mics for people to battle on the microphone.
Dope.
And I remember Nabil always stood out, would always...
One of the best freestylers still. He was on that Mr. Ed podcast. We were bigging him up, man. Like, the freestyle was unbelievable.
And then there was a few other MCs at the time. I can't remember. I remember you coming through, definitely.
Yeah.
And there were some studio sessions from the back of that because we all started talking to each other. again, Bops were doing a night around Bradford at the time.
Bob's Ross.
It was quite a small scene in Bradford.
Yeah, well, everyone knew everyone. From yeah.
So whether it was hip hop, dub, drum and bass, techno, everyone was going to the same nights. And a friend who was called Mike, who was involved in the Bops night, he was quite good at linking people together. So I met Dr. Crow through him, who was doing the bread bins. So it's like, you two should work together. You should,
And of course, you recorded Illegal Operator together.
Of course, yeah.
And of course, you produced half of that album, didn't you?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, you and Mickey, Brutal
That's
Artistry.
Right. So everyone was starting to speak around that time, not just in Bradford, but through MySpace and what have you.
Yeah.
And I met Mr. Ed at the Love Apple at a Fresh Milk night. And he knew Daniel's son had a copy of Mobile Library and just instantly hit it off, into a lot of the same things culturally. And then from there, he introduced me to Mickey, Brutal Artistry.
Yeah.
And I don't know where Mickey knew a lot of rappers from, but he knew Spider, he was working with Spider already.
Yeah, he rated him
some of the grime MCs, and met Mickey. He was like, look, we're performing at Centenary Square, and I can't remember what the festival was. It was one of the Bradford festivals with a stage in Centenary Square.
Yeah.
And it was Practical Heads came on, Victims of Society first track, and within like a minute and a half the police had shut it down. Sound system was off. Police stood in front of the stage like this.
Why?
Just shut down the show. Victims of Society shut it down completely.
Not me, I don't want to be a victim of society.
Yeah.
Was he dropping the N-bomb in the chorus?
Yeah.
That'll help.
All the way through it.
It
was Practical Heads. It was a full crew, really rowdy on the stage.
Yeah. And police shut it down. I bet the crowd were going bananas.
But there was only about 30 people there. Yeah.
Some old lady with a bag in the shopping. Like,
yeah. And, so I was like, yeah, Mickey, got the studio. Come through whenever you want, blah, blah, blah. I'll help you. We'll do what we can, blah, blah, blah. And then over time, he started coming through with Chief Wiggs.
Yep.
Introduced me to the whole Dr. Strange lots.
Right, so that's how you got to know them.
Yeah.
Did you record Sunday Service as well? Is that one of yours?
I might have recorded the vocals for that.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So at the time, again, technology was more available. So people coming through, recording vocals, would take the vocal stems and then do their own mixing.
Yeah.
I think with at that time there was Mickey, had got a microphone, so some of the vocals were done at Mutiny, some of the vocals were done at his place.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, everything was just as it should be, becoming more accessible in terms of recording.
Yeah. Well, the fact you could send stems to someone that wasn't something that we were doing back in the day before,
and collaborate with someone on, in Canada or wherever.
Yeah. That's gorgeous. You needed that. Like the internet was like the blessing and the curse for hip hop, because like suddenly you were able to link loads of other people, but at the same time, everyone was able to do that, so it was tricky.
Yeah.
Just rewinding, but sort of keeping it at the same time. Obviously, you had your drumming going at the same time.
Yeah.
And you ended up working with a band called Sound of the Baskervilles,
right?
Which I also have a lot of history intertwined with for one reason or another. Yeah. How did that come about, bro? How did you get drumming with them? And were you doing band stuff before them, or did you kind of park that while you were engineering?
So I'd always played in bands from a very young age. I remember doing my last GCSE and putting down the pen, going home, packing my drum kit up and getting on a lift to my first gig as a drummer. So I always played in bands. And then when I came back to Bradford, I was more into, production, engineering, and I wasn't playing drums so much. And it was the Fresh Milk night that got me back into playing drums again.
Because you were able to just drop some hip-hop styley drums.
Yeah, just jump on the kit, play some drums, and it made me want to practice drums again. Right. And Sound of the Baskervilles came at, as far as I'm concerned, you were in the first incarnation of that band.
I was?
Yeah.
I remember that.
So that band came out of Fresh Milk. I don't know if you remember, because Nabil was like, got a group of us together. It's like, why don't we put a band like this together? Ken was in playing bass. Do you remember Ken?
With the dreads?
Yeah, that's right.
Fuck yes.
So as Aaron from Sheffield, who I
Hugh,
knew from
H-U-W now. Yeah.
I was friends with from Sheffield. He was in.
Sax, I assume.
And yeah, that's right. No, he played guitar actually.
Was he guitar at the time? Right.
So Nabil put that first incarnation together.
No way.
And
I don't remember that happening.
So Nabil did a project called Sherlock and Holmes with Jamie.
With Jamie, yeah. Jamie, amazing project.
Yeah, I can't remember where Jamie had been. He'd been away travelling. Jamie came back and Jamie quickly chopped it all up into Sound of the Baskervilles. And then I think you did Freyed Not straight after that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. I don't remember what happened between the Fresh Milk. Now you've said that, I can imagine Ken on bass, who until now my only memory was he was my ex-girlfriend's best friend's boyfriend.
Right.
That's the only reason I'd think of him. But like I forgot that we even got together and played bass. So it's weird that it changed over to that. But yeah, I think I'd always had the intention of like having a live band together, and it wasn't long after we'd recorded that Bread in Bradford, you and me and Luke had those tracks together. And he had some tracks, and then I had some solo tracks, and we were out performing as a solo, and then the collaborative ones. And then on a random, we did someone's birthday party with a band, and we were like, right, we've got to make this happen. And we ended up, a friend of mine, Jamie, was at Bradford College, knew a load of people, and he was like, yeah, I can put a little band together for you. And that's how I met J5.
Right,
Nick, the bassist.
So they all went through the music tech in Bradford, the same course.
Same the course you did 10 years later or whatever, because they were even younger than me. And like, so yeah, that's how that came about. So I'm trying to think where the crossover was, because I feel like Sound of the Baskervilles were already going before. We got started about 07. I feel like you guys were already sort of starting to do stuff together in 06. And what was that lineup? So is it because you did the Sherlock and Holmes album and that was turned into Sound of the Baskervilles?
So Sherlock and Holmes, if I remember right, was Nabil and Jamie. And it was, production based.
Jamie's beats and that.
Yeah, and
Malice in Wonderland. There's a track.
Yeah, so the first few songs we worked on as Sound of the Baskervilles was those songs, a band version of those songs.
Yeah.
So I knew, I didn't know Jamie and Ian directly from Sheffield, but they were around Sheffield at the same time as me.
I see. So did Jamie bring Ian in? Because I know Ian through Jamatoni and stuff.
So yeah, they knew each other really well from Sheffield. I think they played in bands together in Sheffield. I played in a band with Aram in Sheffield. So there was that whole Sheffield crossover there in Leeds. Yeah. And I played with them, like jams around at Jamie and Ian's house, I want to say, at the time, quite a bit before Sound of the Baskervilles. So we'd had the occasional jam here and there.
Right.
And then when it came down to doing it, and Bill was like, let's do this, Jamie's back, I want to do Sherlock and Holmes with a band. Yeah. And yeah, that's how it came about. And Nabil left quite early on, actually. I don't think he was that into the band scene after all. And
he just wasn't into much. He was into falling out with people. You guys were like massively respected around Bradford and around Yorkshire. To be fair, you were getting bookings here there, and I was super jealous of it. Not in a like, oh, these fuckers, but it was like, wow, they're doing some great stuff. It always sounded fat. I remember you played Unity Day one time, and it was that. I think I was there for that, and it was like you just sounded sick as hell.
Thank you.
And I think you occasionally, if I was at the gig, you jumped me on maybe once for a verse here and there. And there was definitely a New Year's thing. Didn't you do like a New Year's party in a lock-up in Leeds or something?
That's right.
Time?
Yeah.
I did definitely spit some bars.
I remember
you
being on them because we did part of the end of the show would be improv and an open mic.
Lovely.
And I remember you being on the mic at Santiago's one night.
Santiago's rings a bell. Yeah, nice. Just good vibes, man. Yeah. And actually, Freyed not got their first opportunity. We were starting to. In fact, I don't know whether we existed before. You had a gig at Elbow Rooms, and I think it was you who said, fuck, we can't make this gig, and ended up introducing me to Tony Green.
Right.
It was either you or it was Ian, but I feel like most likely it was probably you because we probably had the best relationship out of it because I knew I'd known you the longest, and they'd gone, okay, there's a band opportunity here because we've got to bail out, we can't make it or whatever.
Right.
And Tony ended up putting Freyed Not on. And, well, Tony put us on. I sent him like the tracks that you and me recorded, and then the group that became Freyed Not went into a studio, a rehearsal studio, and did like 2 sets of 3 hours to come up with the set that we ended up playing. And then from then on, we were constantly just like, okay, that's what Never Look Back sounds like. And we just, we were always sort of, we never got the chance to like stop and go, hold on, you know what I mean? We were just like rolling. But there was I remember back in those days, there was quite a lot of opportunity for like a band that was performing originals to be able, like a pub would have you. Completely. They'd be happy with you putting on some entertainment. They'd chuck you just about enough money to make it worthwhile for a group of 20-year-olds. You know what I mean?
There's a little bit of petrol money there.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So we'd just be playing making all the mistakes we could possibly make and playing all those kind of gigs. But it was fun as fuck. But I always remember it was like, there was always a like, yeah, but Sound of the Baskervilles are killing it.
I mean, Freyed were a good band, J5 on drums.
Oh my
as well,
God, the musician-wise, I mean, J5's doing much bigger stuff than I've ever done with adult DVD right now. Absolutely, and blowing it apart, man. And so it was. We were young and making mistakes, whereas you guys felt a little bit more mature and a bit more established. You know what I mean? You've been recording top 25 UK hip hop albums before you tried.
I don't know. Maybe some people in the band just took it a bit more seriously. I don't know.
Fair. So what happened with Sound of the Baskervilles, and what was it? Was there ever a plan for like albums and releases, and then why did it stop?
We did an EP, and we recorded a second EP.
Recorded it at yours?
Yeah.
Nice.
No, we recorded the first EP at Mutiny.
Yeah.
And as usual, when I'm doing engineering, or any project, just get in there, get it done, get it finished. And Jamie wanted to do the second EP, and that was for me the better music we were making. It was we've been together as a band for quite a lot of years. Sid was in on vocals by then.
Sounded dope.
Thank you. And the great songs. Jamie wanted to do the production, and the recording to me was a bit provincial, and it just never got mixed, never got finished. So
the stems sat somewhere, or are they all dead, do you reckon?
They're probably on a hard disk somewhere.
Will they be on Jamie's hard disk though somewhere?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe in storage. And it was I got a bit frustrated with it, and then I worked on a few records at the time that were doing all right in Germany. And the whole Berlin thing was going off.
Dope. Which records were they, bro?
There was some like a rock record, and like I tracked quite a lot at Castleford for a Leeds band that they were doing all right.
Nice.
Like, I thought, you know what, I've got a credit on these albums. The whole Berlin art scene was sort of still accessible. Let's go to Berlin and see what happens there. So I went to Berlin and lived there for a brief amount of time.
I didn't even know that. I mean, it was after Baskervilles, basically.
Yeah, that's why I left. That's why I left Sound of the Baskervilles.
That's how you left. So Baskervilles was still going, and you kind of left, was it? Right.
And they tried without me for a bit, but I don't think it quite worked.
Did they?
Yeah.
Do you know what? My understanding of the Baskervilles falling apart was because the old classic relationship within the band with Jamie and Sid, and then that falling apart, and then that resulted in.
Yes, no, that did happen, but
that happened after Berlin. Then.
No, so I remember it was these things it's quite difficult.
Yeah.
When you've been in a band for that amount of time, say, look, sorry, I'm leaving. I think it's time for me to move on, doing something different.
Yeah.
I was a bit frustrated with there didn't seem to be any progression in it. There wasn't really any sort of ambition to play outside of the lead scene and what have you. And a couple of weeks later, obviously that relationship had evolved within the band, and then a couple of weeks after I said I was leaving, their relationship fell apart around the same time. And we did play a gig after that as well, and it was a bit... No, we played 2 gigs hostile. After that. Yeah, it was a bit tense on stage, right?
Fucking hell. Yeah. Last thing you need, bro. Yeah. So, bro, I didn't even realise. I think around this time, God knows what was going on in my life, but I might have been moving to Leeds, really, if it was 08. When did you move to Berlin? Was it around that time?
Back end of 07.
07, right, okay. Yeah. And how long were you out there for?
Not long. I was back in this country by 08.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Had you planned to stay a bit longer, or was it just to get this work done, the music done?
It was just to put my name about and see if I could make connections there, with the idea of doing some recording in Berlin.
What were the stumbling blocks?
I mean, it was a slog. There was a lot of people there doing the same thing. I didn't speak German. It was, I did manage to get my way into a studio for a day, and so this is what I do, and they gave me running the studio for the day to have a play around, so they knew that I knew what I was doing. Yeah. And I think at that time with my engineering, I was pretty confident I could walk into any studio anywhere and get the session running. I managed to go into Hansa for a bit, which was the studio that and Bowie made famous. Sick. It wasn't the original Hansa, but I got foot through the door, met the owners, chatted with them.
Dope.
Nosed round a bit. It's like, hang on, what are you doing, miking stuff up like that? And yes, I learnt a few miking techniques that way as well. Right. And then I came back. I think I came back for Christmas. Yeah. With the intention of going back to Berlin after Christmas, and I just thought, do you know what? I've got studio stuff going on here. Why am I walking the streets in Berlin, sort of chasing this dream when it's already happening here?
Because that's interesting. Because we did both albums with you, Freyed not. So we did that Bradfunk in late 07.
You didn't do the second one with me.
Didn't we?
No.
What the fuck did I record in Castleford with you then, bro? Because I remember you moved studios. Or did you have both studios going?
So that was... Yeah, I was in Castleford before I went to Berlin. Yeah, I was. I had 3 studios.
3 studios? Where was the other? Mutiny, Castleford?
Right. So there was Mutiny.
In Bradford, yeah.
And then there was a studio across the road that opened called SMV.
Oh, I definitely recorded something with Phil in there. Mr. Nice Guy in there. Yeah.
So, that wasn't my studio. I wasn't involved with the running of it, but I could use it to book certain sessions. And I remember you doing, I think it was some work through Artworks.
Likely got some rappers in there.
Yeah. I think we did some of the Artworks
kids in there.
projects.
Yeah, that sounds
there.
right.
And with Castleford, there was a government initiative around at the time because, studio work, there's no money in it. Every little bit that was coming in was paying the rent, paying the electric, maybe upgrading a microphone here and there.
Yep.
And there was a government initiative came about where it's like, okay, we'll work with you. And they got me a foot through the door at the studio in Castleford. When I was growing up, that was one of the best studios in West Yorkshire. It had the reputation. Tub Thumping was recorded there.
Right.
So
it was a proper studio.
Yeah,
it was
pro-end
posh
studio. And I got the government paid me a salary.
Beautiful.
For a year. So it was like I didn't have to worry about money.
Cheers, government.
Foot through the door. Well, it lasted a year. And then after a year, it was like, shit, what do I do now?
Yeah, sounds familiar.
And so, I was doing a lot in Castleford,
Or before Berlin, you were over in Castleford doing that?
I was. And then when I came back from Berlin, the work was getting less because of recession. The 07 crash had happened. Tories were in. There wasn't as much arts funding about.
Yep.
But bring it back to Bradfunk. So I remember doing that in the summer, right? And we tracked it for 2 days at Mutiny.
Yes.
And then we mixed it in Castleford.
It was mixed in Castleford. That's why I feel like I had a Freyed session in Castleford because we were out mixing it over there. I remember now. Yeah.
So at the time, because I was in Castleford, knew the benefits of working with that higher end equipment and what have you.
Yeah.
It was always like, okay, what's the budget? What can we do? And what worked out best for the budget at the time was, all right, we'll record it all in Mutiny. We haven't got the time constraints, and then we'll mix it in Castleford.
Nice.
That was how I seem to remember it happening.
Great memories, man, of that. Like, you felt like a real boy doing
it. It was a real... The challenge of it, right, was it was a crossover time in Freyed, right? So Egon was leaving, P was coming in.
Yeah,
and it
we
was
had all of them on it.
Yeah, and it was managing...
Mickey coming in.
Everything. It was well hot as well. And
there was a lot of super warm in that studio. But we used to rehearse in your studio as well, so we knew it inside out. I loved rehearsals up there. Like every I can't remember what day of the week, but we always bezzed up.
Yeah.
And in fact, did you even let us in, or maybe we had some keys or something? But we recorded it. We set up and you could smoke in there. So it was just like it was fucking it was just the perfect spot for the age group that we were at, so we could have have a smoke, do some jams.
There's no one on your back saying what you can and can't do, and it was it's best to practice.
Well, absolutely, It was just a great, It was just good vibes up there, man. And I can't remember why the fuck I decided to record the second album away, or maybe you weren't available or something. It wasn't a financial reason.
If I remember rightly, Ben was in on guitar, and he was Leeds University, and he had Free Runner Studios in Leeds University.
But we didn't record there, bro. We recorded with Bruce Wood at Touchwood Studios, who was the Nightmares on Wax guy.
Right, okay.
He's their sound engineer.
I remember Touchwood now you mention it.
Yeah. So we did it there for some reason, but it wasn't. I don't know why, because I have a sort of thing about my own music, which is I cut off about 2010, and anything before that, it was learning. I don't want to hear it.
It's all learning.
It's all learning. But that Bradfunk had a sound that I can still listen to now. And if we took the vocals out of it, I can really listen to it.
Right.
It sounds really nice and full and fat because of the work you put into it and the way you recorded it. And then like More Fire, which was recorded with Bruce, and then we did the vocals separately. Nothing taken away from Bruce, but we'd just gone, we're a band, we want to record this, and he'd gone, yeah, cool guys, and done it. Whereas you, I think, put more heart and soul into it, not taking anything away from it.
Of course, because I absolutely loved the band at the time.
And you were into your hip hop, you were well into that.
Yeah, I mean, when we spoke about doing this, I thought, you know what, I'm going to listen to that album again. And I dug out the album.
Bradfunk?
Yeah.
Sick.
And at the time, I remember doing the album and mixing it and thinking, I wish we'd had like another, day to track the drums and got more of a sort of, authentic breakbeat sound, like hip hop sound out the drums and what have you. But we didn't. We got it done in the time we had.
Totally.
And when I listened to it, I thought, actually, this sounds pretty good. Do you know what I mean? It's like it sounds a lot better than I remember it sounding
raw,
after the mix.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah, and stuff like the jams. There's a couple of little jams in the middle.
There is,
just nice, man.
I've forgotten about them bits, and like the radio interference that happened by accident.
The guitar was picking up, right? Or the mic on the guitar was picking up some mad BCB radio or some shit.
I think there was just one bit. I can't remember which song it was, but there was some backing vocals. I just thought, they're a bit loud, and just sort of went like this. My hand like to turn them down. It's like, it's good. I'm very proud of that album, man. It's a good album to work on. Yeah.
When was the move from Mutiny? In fact, let's talk about a bit more about what you were recording when you. Yeah. So you came back from Berlin anyway, and then you continued to work in these studios for a couple of years more. Was it?
Yeah, I can't remember what year it was until. But yeah, there's a lot going on, and really still doing the studio stuff in Bradford. In Castleford quite a lot, not as much as before going to Berlin, because obviously there was a lot less frivolous cash around for people, a lot less arts funding. Yeah. So it became even more of a struggle to do.
What were your what's some of your favourite projects that you've worked on that you've recorded then in Mutiny over the years?
The Freyed album was definitely one of them.
Take that, man. Yeah. I'll take that all day, bro.
In Mutiny.
Yeah.
The Freyed album.
Yeah. Can be in Castleford too, or whatever, if there's any others that you're just like, that was sick.
Something that stands out in Castleford was Sonil Kalen, who was a tabla player who, Timbaland sampled him for the Missy Elliott Get You Free
No way, you got him in?
And he was working on a sample CD.
Nice.
And it was quite traditional Indian tabla playing, and then, got chatting with him, lovely guy. And then he came back to do a night session to do a jungle tabla playing, and he did the Missy Elliott loop at like jungle tempo and what have you. And
people were losing their goddamn minds, right?
It was like this guy, right?
Yeah,
absolute beast on his instrument, and
nice.
That's one that definitely stands out.
Yeah.
In terms of Mutiny and the rap stuff, some of the Chief Wiggs sessions definitely stand out.
Yeah. Stuff you produced though, right? What about because you've always been a decent beat maker. Not that of late I've heard many beats by you, really.
I haven't done anything for a long time.
Yeah. But there was a time when you had like beat tapes going. You could get a Guv beat tape and like try and write something to it.
Yeah, I mean, so the Guv stuff was always, I was experimenting a lot with equipment.
Yeah.
It was never necessarily, making music with the idea of this is produced music and it was just me messing about with equipment.
Yeah.
How do I use this equipment? Every page in samplers, like what does this do? What does this do?
Yeah.
Reversing the reel and stuff. Recording some bits forwards, some bits backwards.
Yeah.
And I had all this music, and it's like, okay, what do I do with this? And it's like, so I put it out on. I did a 4-series release on CD, stashed it around the charity shops, and was going around places.
Clever.
Going around digging. It's like, all right, well, I'll put my CD in there. It's like tagging, right, when you go around.
So that's what you were doing in charity shops? You were just dropping it in between records and stuff?
Yeah.
That's smart. And what people do, did it say, please take me, or were they taking it to the counter and like, can I buy this Guv CD?
Pay something for charity, right? It's like...
Sick guy. Did you put labels on it of how much it was?
No, I didn't put a price on that. That was up to the charity shop. So I did that as like...
Too cool.
I did, 4 or 5... series release. No, there must have been more than that, because I was doing that back in Sheffield as well.
Dope.
And then was doing a production sort of crew, if you like, which was with a friend of mine called the Electric Pimpernels.
That's right. Who was the friend? Remind me of his name. Or his production name.
Well, back then we were going as Le Fugitive, and I was the Scarlet Pimpernel, and together we were the Electric Pimpernels.
That's right.
Sometimes we'd have guest musicians on there. Sometimes we'd have guest producers on there, and the idea was it was like a unit doing the production, and then we'd get different people to feature on the production.
Yeah.
So that was always the whole idea with that. Again, it was connected with Mutiny, so it was like we were doing Mutiny together. By this point, there was a lot less people involved in Mutiny, and we were having pretty much the run of it. Trying to cover the rent and the bills. Keep the place going between us, and. Yeah, and then there was some falling outs.
Was there?
It's, Electric Pimpernels. This was when Mutiny started sort of dividing up a bit.
Right.
And then in terms of beat making, I was like, well, people are asking me for beats. I'm really enjoying doing this. So I carried on as the Scarlet Pimpernel for a bit.
Yeah, that's
and did quite a lot of.
So you put a 7 out, or was that the Electric Pimpernels? I've got a 7.
It was an Electric Pimpernel 7. It was a split, so that was it was a band that I did when I was in Sheffield called Da Band. It was like quite a lo-fi, loose 3-piece, and then we'd get people to feature on the recordings of this live band.
Right.
So we set up a label called Raw Creation, which was a friend, Daz, from Sheffield.
Yep.
That was his idea. A few years later, we got round to doing it, and we put out a split, Electric Pimpernels and Da Band. And that, 3 MCs.
Cleverly was one of them?
Yep, that's right.
Who was that Kid Acne's hype guy?
That's right, yeah. And Mr. No.
Mr. No.
And I can't, it's a friend Pat who I knew from Straight, but I can't remember what MC name he was going under at the time. But he rapped in Spanish on the record as well. And it was always this idea of like multilingual releases and what have you.
Yeah.
Into a lot of French hip hop at the time. Supreme MTM, MC Solar and what have you. And then we actually did a follow-up to that 7-inch, and it was an old Da Band track with, again, Doyen D was on it.
Wow.
And then I think the Electric Pimpernels one was Dr. Crub, Anil MC, do you remember Anil?
I do remember Anil MC, yeah.
And
we were only
Phil,
talking about the other week.
Philly Buster.
There you go, Philly Buster.
And that was going to be the follow-up, but there was no, putting records out.
Too expensive, so it never happened.
Money doesn't always come back in, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
so
fair.
that just ended up on MySpace. And
okay.
Yeah, the label, I think we did some CDRs, MySpace a bit after that, but it was just really, we were kind of, we'll do a label, we'll get distribution, and then when that distribution doesn't come through, it's like, it's kind of hard to continue it.
Yeah, fair enough.
And we were going, speaking to Suspect Package at the time. I think I sent one of your Bread in Bradford albums at the time. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing, but there's also this going on in Bradford, just as a sort of letting Suspect Package know what was going on up here.
I appreciate it, man. He definitely supported Flame Griller down the line, so maybe that was off the back of knowing that. So thank you for spreading the word a little, man.
Yeah, we're trying.
Your solo stuff, you've put projects out over the years as like an individual. There was a Guvnor release. I feel like there was a Guvnor one at one point.
There was a 7-inch, so I put that out around the same time as Electric Pimpernels.
So I must have that on 7 as well. I must have that one.
That's right.
What was that one called? What was the?
I think that was Blagger Blagger. Yeah,
that sounds right.
And it was again Mutiny. There was different musicians coming through, and there was a reel to reel, and it had this really nice like harmonics, like cello playing on it and whatever. And I was like flipping out. So I sampled loads of bits off this reel and made a beat out of that. And it was like, actually, it wasn't necessarily the best music I was making at the time.
Yeah.
Some money got paid into my bank account by mistake. I won't go too into that.
Father Ted moment here.
Well,
like
this
just
is
resting in your account.
It's like, where's that come from? So over a few days, took it all out and like just sort of sat with it for a bit. And then basically that gave me the money to put out a couple of 7-inches. I think I took my sister on holiday for a few days and put out a couple of records. Yeah,
nice. That's well, yeah.
I mean, years later, a bit later, I found out where the money came from. Still paying it. Well, still paid it back for a lot of years.
You paid it back, did you?
Yeah, paid it back.
Fair play. Did you know the person, or was it just a fluke coincidence?
No, it was
wrong digit.
A student loan error from dropping out of university years before. But it gave me a lump sum of money all at once. It's like, well, I've always wanted to put records out, so let's try and set up a label.
Oh man, beautiful! Shit, he ended up paying it. It's their fucking fault, but fair play.
Yeah.
So, because fast forwarding more recently, there's been a Simon Mawson release that I listened to.
Yeah.
That genre-wise, I wouldn't even know what the fuck to call it.
Right.
It was decent. It's really decent.
Thanks,
obviously, really musically mad.
So So with the Scarlet, I mean, there's production with the Scarlet Pimpernel, Electric Pimpernels, New Jerusalem. We did that.
Oh right. Did you do all those beats?
No, again that was Scarlet Pimpernel and Brutal Artistry.
Right.
And then Dr. Crobe, which was Scarlet Pimpernel, Brutal Artistry. So we did those albums, and then Mutiny sort of disbanded.
Ironically.
And I moved to Manchester.
Right, Manchester. I didn't realise that had happened. Okay.
So, and then I was still doing quite a lot of music production, trying to get into studios in Manchester. It's like, it wasn't like knowing the studios and the studios knowing me. It was like starting over again. And I was like, do I really want to go through this whole, graft of getting a foot through the door in the studios? And I was like, I've always wanted to do film and TV music.
Yeah.
so I went for TV and film production, tried to do some music that way.
Yeah.
Ended up doing the music for a TV series.
Did you? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Which TV series?
It was called The Ends.
Okay.
And it was going to be on Channel 4.
Dope.
And right at the end, when it was finished, the whole company went bankrupt.
Dope.
Didn't go to Channel 4. And it was like, I've grafted my ass off.
Somewhere.
Yeah, and it was really good exercise because it was writing the music for one episode in 24 hours.
Right.
I get the episode, they wanted the music back 24 hours later. So it was 24-hour graft, and it was a real good practice of writing a lot of music in a short space
and
of time.
just you on your own, or did you get people in? You go, I've got this 24 hours, let's get...
It was all in the box
orchestra
production.
Wow, right.
Quite cinematic, a lot of, piano and strings and what have you.
Long synth notes.
Yeah, long synth notes. Yeah. Little piano, like tinkles here and there. And,
yeah.
But yeah, at the time I was still doing Scarlet Pimpernel, but I didn't know any MCs in Manchester.
Oh,
and it was like, so right, I'll do this remix project, right?
Yeah.
So I did, again, 4-part series, something about 4-part series at the time, and I remixed a lot of like the 90s, like Backpacker stuff, like Cool G Rap, Queen Latifah, and put them out through Bandcamp, like DIY releases. They did reasonably okay.
Under the name Scarlet Pimpernel at this point.
That's right. And then the last album I did after that, it was with the idea of they were the 12 inches at 45, right? Play it at 33 and strip it right back to the rhythm section and then make another album on top of that. So it's the idea is the rhythm tracks of 90s hip hop played at 33 RPM but made into different music. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Like, it's a clever idea. It's
off on another tangent.
Whether your punters will like.
So it's that
get it in it.
Mowax thing of like you get a record and there's no RPM on it, and it's like you can play it at 33 or 45. And it was this idea of making this real like down tempo rap music.
It's clever, really
like hip-hop,
clever.
Like really dense, like ambient hip hop sort of. Like trip hop, but a bit more industrial.
Did you come to like that? Did it end up on Bandcamp or all?
I put it on Bandcamp, put it out as a tape.
Is it still available?
Yes, it's still available.
Scarlet Pimpernel Bandcamp?
No, so I put this, it was again because it was too far removed from the Scarlet Pimpernel. Right. And it's like, what name do I even put this out under? So I ended up putting it out under my own name.
That was the Simon Mawson release?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I probably kind of rushed it a bit to get it out there, and I probably should have just sat with it a bit and done things a bit differently. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, some of my favourite music I've made, it's, it was that combination of playing instruments and using samples, but then using samples in quite a different way to how I'd used them before. It wasn't necessarily breaks. I played a lot of the drums on it, but I was triggering samplers from the drum kit, and then feeding them through guitar pedals and what have you. There's a lot of like production that I wasn't doing on anything else before.
Yeah. Nice. So when did Manchester turn into Bristol then? Because I know that's where you hang your hat now.
Yeah. So from Manchester, stayed in Manchester for I think about 7 years. Right. And really got back into playing drums again there, playing in different bands, going to improv nights, and then from Manchester, I went to Bristol. Yeah.
Which is a hub of, always considered to be like a hub of music. There's just so much going on down there.
It is, and I think that was. I didn't really want to go back to London again, and just knew I wanted to be somewhere a bit different than the north of England. Yep. And that sort of 90s history of music, Bristol, was part of the appeal, and then to get there, it's very different to what sort of known through the 90s as a kid growing up in the north, and there's a real sort of strong like avant-garde improv scene there. There's a real nice like welcoming improv scene with the elders right through to people our age.
Are you well into your improv then? Because I came through in 17 to drop a record off. I was doing like a UK dropping the records off to everyone who'd bought one. I went through to catch you at a night, and I'm sure it was like an improv 3-piece thing that you were doing then. Is there there's a part here that needs to be in that, or is it you just really like it? It's just a good way to express yourself on drums.
It's a good way to just be out of the house and playing music, right? So, I mean, after the whole studio thing started falling off, well, not falling off, but just became less appealing. It was this idea of music not necessarily being recorded, just happening in the moment, and not having to like labour over it and what have you, and just actually letting it go and be a bit more free.
For a fact, I'm obsessed with that shit now. Right. It's just so freeing, isn't it? To like just create music.
Yeah, with a jam of Tony.
Exactly.
Yeah. And actually, if there's recordings, then do some edits afterwards. But sometimes just, let it happen, and that was the moment, and, move on to the next moment, if you like.
Yeah.
And, didn't really know anyone in Bristol. All right, what do? I play drums. I'll start going to the improv nights. Met a few people. A friend Harry was, quite an important person to me at the time, and he was doing a lot of improv bands, and I was going to one of his nights, and he said, look, we're doing these improv bands where we're playing different venues.
Yeah.
Be part of it. And he was ringing me up quite a lot and getting me involved. That was who you saw me play with in
He's the trumpet player?
That's right.
Really sick. Really nice bloke as well.
Yeah,
Really good chat about Miles Davis and shit, which I'm sure he wasn't. Oh yeah, Miles Davis plays jazz trumpet, doesn't he? It was one of them conversations, I'm sure. Yeah, great mate.
I mean, some gigs are great. Some gigs are a bit like, oh, that could have been better. But then through doing that, through doing that, I met some of like the older generation who were more pioneers of this like free improv, and to be actually welcomed in by them and saying, okay, you can play this style, and to be brought in and asked to play with people of that calibre was quite complimentary.
And are you still regularly doing that now then?
As and when I'm asked, yeah. If life and work gets in the way a bit. And
of course. And so engineering, recording engineering, has that taken a proper backseat these days? When was the last time you recorded someone else's shit?
Recorded someone else's music a long time ago.
Was it? Yeah. And would you reckon that'll ever surface again, or
it's still there.
It's
still
such
there.
ability. I guess you're so capable, and you've got so much knowledge. I mean, you literally went to Berlin and were learning mic techniques. You're like you've got an encyclopedic knowledge of workings of a studio.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell this story. So when all the studio stuff was coming to an end, I had this dream, right, about recording. Do you know, like the South Pacific records? You've probably seen them in charity shops, right?
I sampled Meh is
right.
South Pacific.
So it was that style of like recording where it's like quite a prominent all-style vocal with a ribbon mic, and you've got your orchestra like left and right. And I was recording it with like quite provincial equipment, like an 8-track mixing desk and a 4-track tape machine, and I had all these vintage mics. And I finished the session, and then I packed everything up and put it in a deep freezer, right? And it was like, hang on, right, that knowledge and skills there, this is kind of going away for another day, do you know what I mean? And then it's like, right, let's move on and do something else.
Right.
Yeah, it was very sort of vivid dream. So I will still do things in the future.
Day. Yeah. Be a shame not to, man. Well, it's a shame as well, because like, obviously you were so intrinsic in the West Yorkshire hip-hop scene, which is kind of what this is all about.
Yeah.
For a period of time when you were just like the guy for production, for recording and engineering and stuff. And like you made a lot of things happen, a lot of vinyl with your name on, a lot of the No Pretense stuff was recorded with you and all those
about
sort
half
of things.
Of the vocals for that were recorded with me,
Yeah, man, I mean...
and again, I think I was doing bits of mastering for people, bits of mixing at the time. Again, still doing mixing and mastering now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you get throwing bits and pieces of that. Is that through people you know, or is it even just
it's through people I know generally. Again, equipment's very accessible, so people are recording and doing their own mixing, and it might be just a case of being sent the stems, just tweak their mixes, and then do the mastering from there. And
that's pretty sick. So you sort of still staying a part of it. Is that hip hop stuff largely, or
it is? Yeah, it's a mixture of hip hop stuff and then more electronic based stuff as well.
Nice. That's dope. So so in terms of like your solo music, are you sort of working? Because what's your work at the moment? What's your job at the moment?
My job at the minute is I'm a mental health practitioner. I'm an occupational therapist, but I work under the title of mental health practitioner.
Fair play.
Which is pretty taxing to be fair.
I bet, very taxing and a lot to bring home with you mentally. At the end of,
sure.
Do you use music in what you do?
I have done at times, yeah. So at one point I was working in forensic services in secure hospitals.
Right.
And, obviously music is a universal language, and I found we could do writing exercises through that interest in hip-hop and that knowledge of hip-hop, where it was like, we didn't really have access to studio equipment being in hospitals, but you can do this exercise where, say, you take an image, whether it be a postcard or a poster, and you've got a selection of them, and you take one, and you've got a 5-minute timer to write. I'm not a writer, but I used to do the exercise with them, and the guys I was working with would write rap lyrics.
Nice.
And it was like a real nice exercise to do with them.
Nice way to use it in amongst that.
And then we'd do like listening together. So you were playing favourite tracks, they were really into hip hop. I was like, oh, right, there's this guy Lewis Parker, blah blah blah. And so, it's quite a nice thing to listen to, and some quite deep subconscious lyrics in there for.
So is there space outside of your a busy work life and very important work that you're doing, like to continue to like write and produce your own stuff? Like, is that?
There is, but time is very limited. So I'm approaching production from a very different place now, where it's not necessarily sitting down and programming loops. It's very linear. This is the idea.
Yeah.
It's about. So I'm actually recording like I would do on a tape machine, where say I'll record 3.5, 4 minute drum track and then build on top of that. So I'm not using the facilities of the computer to edit and program.
Yeah, it's just to record and then
literally press record. Yeah,
I've been finding myself doing that more and more. I do it as a beat battle. I do locally at the minute, and like just through time alone, I'm just like record that bit, and then that's the beat.
Sure, yeah.
Just rather than trying to get like get into the nitty gritty of it, just for like, but it can still comes out sounding pretty sick, and also it sort of sits more in that improv vibe of just here's the moment, that was the moment, that's how it felt and sounded.
And you get sort of that linear sort of feeling throughout as well, where it just adds something different to music. It's the space of actually breathing in that subtle change as well.
Nice. Yeah. And future-wise, is there well, obviously you'll always be a part of music, but is there like are you wanting to get back to it, or that to be a full-time job, or is it like, do you feel you've found your lane, as it were, in a minute? Like,
I don't know. I guess in the back of my mind, there's always this idea of having a year off and doing music, right?
Yeah, damn right. Ribbon Mike South Pacific vibes.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know, but if I had that year off, would I do music? It's impossible to say. But I still have ideas for projects. Yeah. Still got about 3 projects on the go in my mind. Yeah. All 3 are started and just picking away at bits. Probably going to do a beat tape by the end of the year.
I was just about to say.
Watching the Hash Finger episode, it's like, do you know what, beat tapes? And it's quite easy to do. Actually, that was quite inspiring. Actually,
Oh, that's good to hear. And do you know what the thing is? Because it would be nice to hear some more hip hop production from you, because you made sick beats. But another good thing about that is if you started out with the intention of that being a project, and then they just turned into some sort of unfinished beats that you were kind of happy with. Yeah. It would be so sick for them to get around West Yorkshire, get some rappers on them and stuff like that, and you know what I mean, have your production back in the scene.
If that was to happen, it happens great.
I love that, yeah.
But equally, it's like, hang on, I've got a lot of production that's never been heard that's on hard drive. Again, some of my favourite beat work, and it's like, why just put a beat tape out?
Well, do it.
Yeah.
That needs to happen, bro.
So again, took inspiration from yourself and Hashfinger in that episode. It's like, right, okay, I can make this happen.
I'm going to badger the fuck out of you over the next year to hear some of that
with
shit.
the Hashfinger and yourself, that release.
Yeah, you were badgering me about that one day. Yeah, that should come out. That will come out at some point, definitely. Guv, I think that probably just about does us, man.
Right.
I've really enjoyed, man. Thank you so much for coming through today,
pleasure.
man.
Thank you.
Big up, man. That was Guv, Simon Mawson, the Electric Pimpernel. Go and check his entire back catalogue out. He, off camera, went, oh, fuck, totally forgot to mention that he's got a project with Murray P, Muzz the Don, on its way. He's just waiting for some cuts on it, so it should be out very soon. So please keep your eyes peeled for that. Check his links in the friggin' information. Check them there. Go check him out. Say hi. And until next time, big up.